I'm Barry Davis, and I'm a divorce mediator. What I do basically is I help keep my clients out of court, I help keep their kids out of the middle, and I help them move on with their lives as quickly as possible.
So first of all, since I'm talking about a legal topic, it's important for you to know I'm not an attorney, and this should absolutely not be considered legal advice. What I'm looking to do in this video is to provide you with a basic, what I would call plain English understanding of child support, so that you have an understanding of what it addresses, what it's meant to cover, that kind of thing. So let's start with this. From a more technical perspective, child support is for the basic care and maintenance of the children. Generally, the interpretation of that is to mean that covers housing, food, and typical clothing. Of course, there are expenses over and above that. That's what I refer to as additional children's expenses, and I have another video on that if you'd like to reference that. When we talk about child support, it is one of the more straightforward, even formulaic aspects of the divorce process, at least in California. There is a software program called the DissoMaster, which attorneys utilize, the courts utilize, I utilize with my clients as well. And generally you would put in several elements into that software, including each party's their income, their time that they're responsible for the child, and several other more minor factors. And then the DissoMaster software would provide you with a child support figure, which is a monthly figure. Generally, this is what the courts would go with, but there can be some exceptions to that. Now, let's talk about some of the factors that are important to cover when we talk about child support. Number one, I just talked about, that's how much. Number two, you need to talk about when it will be paid. And then number three, you need to talk about how you would potentially modify it in the future. So, as I said, the monthly amount is usually determined by the software. It's what in California is called guideline support. And the idea there is that will provide for the basic care and maintenance of the child in both households. Okay? So if there's a higher income earner, even if it's 50-50 as far as the parenting schedule, they could well still be paying child support to try to balance the living standards between the two households. Okay? Now, how often is it paid? Oftentimes it's paid 100% by the first of the month, or maybe 50% of the first, 50% of the 15th. And I have clients that do it based on when they get paid. So it's something that the two parties, at least in mediation, can decide when it's going to be paid. The idea is generally that it will go until each child turns 18, graduates from high school, whichever comes later. Okay? So again, how you determine it and how long it goes on for are pretty straightforward, especially when you compare it to spousal support. There are some exceptions to it ending whenever a child graduates from high school. Number one example of this are special needs situations, so there definitely are exceptions. Okay? Now, what about modifying support? Child support can never be nailed down like spousal support can. So it's always modifiable because it's for the benefit of the children. So generally, when you look at the court-based approach, you have to go back to court, look at relevant factors, all those kind of things, and the judge will make a determination. In mediation, what I generally do is build in some sort of review based on certain factors, such as getting a new job, losing a job, change in income of plus or minus X percent, maybe 5, 10, 15%. And then both parties agree ahead of time that if one of those things occurs, that they'll come back to mediation and that they'll review the child support to see if it still remains relevant. So those are just some of the basics. So that you can understand, not from a technical legal perspective, but from a general common sense practical perspective, what is child support and what are the elements that we look at when we're addressing child support. If you'd like any additional information, please feel free to reference my website at davismediation.com. Thank you very much.